Welcome to Courageous Conviction. Remember that Jeff and I record each Saturday 5 episodes. So please hit the like button, subscribe so you catch all 5 episodes. We usually start out with one theme or topic. We have to go down a lot of rabbit holes to really understand it. Some things are more sensitive than others right now, what's going on in the world. So hit the like button, subscribe, and let's jump into this video. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Courageous Conviction, Eric and Jeff. Jeff's back with us this week. We only got a few videos out last week. Jeff was on vacation, and unfortunately, with my workload, we don't record on Saturday mornings. We are lost. So we apologize for not getting more videos out last week. But we do have some good stuff we want to talk about today, huh, Jeff?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, let's jump right into it then, bud. And because we got to keep it kind of short today. We're getting some comments back. You've been going back and forth with kind of one person in there and in our comment section that has an issue with the fact that I myself, I guess, that I had ever done marijuana in my life. And so because it was illegal. And so she apparently is a member and she has a problem with that. And so what is she what then discrediting what we're saying because we had gone array before and now so we're not credible to listen to?
Well, I didn't get that impression. I think it was just more of, making a judgment, like, I'm sorry that you think I'm judging you, but, I'm judging you, like, hey, marijuana, I've always been I've always been against marijuana because it was illegal and, this and that. And like, you do know the story, right? That, Eric and I both had left the church after our missions and, pot was part of that. And regardless of whether it was legal or whether it was illegal. And, I mean, in my case, I know there were several things that I was doing that, was not, legal, and marijuana, would have been one of them, so, sorry that if that offends anybody, but, people do change. And, part of the word of wisdom is to stop doing things that will conflict with that.
I just have to ask a question too, because I bet you this sister has never jaywalked and never sped, never run a stop sign.
Right. I mean, there's that whole,
where are you gonna go?
It's like, I mean, legality, and I don't want to get down that rabbit hole where, everybody's a lawbreaker, at some time in their life, regardless, but, in this case, marijuana was a big issue for her. And I understand that. I think it is. And we are,
I don't,
Jeff. Not advocates. I'm not an advocate for marijuana at all. And it's quite the opposite, which I was at one time. I thought that marijuana, when I left the church was more of, I had adopted that as being my own religion, So yeah, I mean, there is if there was an idol worshiping kind of thing going on, that would have been marijuana for me, I did a lot of other drugs, but I found marijuana as being like something that brought me closer to God, not to Jesus, but to my own spirituality, and which was, a big fat lie, it was PHAT, if you want to, pun intended, lie. It was not something that helps me. There's a lot of studies right now that says that marijuana leads to psychosis, and it does. It is not helpful. It is not a harmless drug. So I'm far from being an advocate for marijuana. And, even with a lot of a lot of products, and I know the church right now has come out because there's a lot of political push there to say, hey, medical doctors are saying that it's good for you. But, I say, have a little caution there, because there's nothing that we can do when it goes out, when I go out and drive out, and I'm out every day, the freeways reek of marijuana, the stoplight reeks of marijuana. And, it's gone the other way, which before I was an advocate for the legalization, but I was never for the commercialization of marijuana like we have with beer and everything else. So it's, it's become a bigger issue and more of a gateway drug than it ever has been. So, I do, on one side, I'm like, hey, get away from the judgment, because regardless of whether it's illegal now and it was illegal back then. People do change, and the process of changing and repentance led me to not be a marijuana smoker after a couple of decades, so
Well, Jeff, just let me check and jump in here because that kind of it's just is so typical of so many members of the church. They're such hypocrites. I'm perfect, and shame on you for ever going out there. And I'm judging you because of that, for falling away, for letting go of the iron rod. Well, I hope with all goodness that this woman can learn to be Christ-like, because that attitude is not a Christ-like attitude. Now, we have standards, and I think this is why we're getting the pushback right now, and why the woke movement is actually gaining ground, is because of that prude attitude. Right?
No, I think it's destructive to people that are trying to come back to church. They see
very destructive.
Like that. I'm like, if you really want to stop people from smoking pot, and if you got an issue with it, shut up. I mean, you come up with something else and say, hey, I know that I've known somebody that changed and stopped using marijuana. Use me. Just say, hey, I know that marijuana is destructive and that it takes people down the wrong path. But don't tell me that, hey, because it was illegal, that there's some extra kind of, judgment that is relevant there. Because,
well, if you want to get technical, it was not actually illegal in Costa Rica. Okay. The books, the laws would say, oh, yeah, it's illegal, but it wasn't really illegal. The police, everybody in common, just like prostitution, if you want to, in Costa Rica, there's not a law that says it's legal. No law says it's illegal. It's just accepted, right? And so when you're talking about illegalities, Americans have this really closed mind, and it's like they get into you can even get into arguing age of consent, right? Americans want to judge the rest of the world off of what America does, and yet America has been driven by a political agenda for many, many years, right? And all I'm trying to say is that the hypocrisy in the church with the members, we have got to stop being so doggone judgmental. When people are trying to come back, I don't care where they've been. And if people knew my past and how far out I went, oh boy, you can really throw a judgment book at me. You're gonna have to wait for my book for that one though, because I've been way out there. And you want to start judging me, you're gonna be able to throw a lot of rotten tomatoes at me if you want to. But that's why I'm here right now, because I'm trying to help other people that are out there. And it's so easy to be out there. And going back to this, Jeff, not that we get in the whole thing, because I really want to get back to the whole idea of patriotism, right? But the idea in the church now too, like I was having this conversation with my bishop, and the manual changed, and the stance on the church for the marijuana to what my bishop was explaining to me now, and I wasn't privy to see the manual, didn't have that type of a calling to see, the manual, but the bishop went through it with me and talked to me about it, and not. We were just discussing it one day, and I was telling him it's a gateway drug, and he actually started defending it. Now I have a very, very strict bishop, very high standards, very strict. He started telling me that, look, medicinal marijuana, so long as it's prescribed by a doctor and it's used within that prescription, is tolerable now within the church, like it is any other medication, right? And I'm going to say this much: I know a guy in Costa Rica actually who had a heart attack, and he had heart issues, and the doctor, because most of his issue was stress, right? And the doctor prescribed him medicinal cannabis, right? And this guy did not want to take. He tried that, and he did not want to take it. He remembered the church because he was young men's president at the time, and it's when this all kind of hit him. He was young men's president, and he was trying this medicinal marijuana. He told me, he says, "Hey, I'm trying to teach these kids. I know this is medicinal. I'm within the word of wisdom. I'm okay. I'm not abusing it. But when I go to church and I'm teaching kids not to use drugs, I always wonder, can they smell this? Do they know? Am I being a hypocrite?" And so he stopped, and he went back to using the actual pharmaceutical drugs, which had a really bad effect on him. It really affected him badly. Pharmaceutical drugs are bad and many times worse. And so one could argue then that cannabis is natural. Now, I'm not advocating for this. I am just saying that, there are situations out there that we need to be careful and not be so doggone judgmental as members of the church. And that's being Christ-like, I feel, not to go down the rabbit hole, but I think we get back to the judgmental issue and why people leave the church, why we left the church, because of that same problem, the judgmentalism, if you would, right?
Well, and I agree with you on the part that, hey, we need to allow other people to have their own path. So judgment, when I talk against marijuana, this is where this is coming from. I have a lot of experience with it, as you know. And I know a lot about it. I've done a lot of research on it. I know what it does to the brain. Here's the problem with marijuana, especially THC. THC is a mind altering drug. So it's going to change and alter your consciousness. And because of that, there is an element of that is wrong. Because, you want to be a free thinker. Well, don't be controlled by marijuana.
But Jeff, any type of psych drugs are going to be mind altering. Okay. And so it's okay that for somebody to go get something from a psychologist and take it. And there's many members of the church that are on drugs from psychologists. I mean, we have a lot of people.
I disagree with any of it. I mean, that's just my personal approach to that. Yeah, I've been prescribed things like Adderall. I've been prescribed other drugs, I mean, and even a lot of narcotics for pain, I mean, you can take one, and maybe you won't feel a lot of, psychotropic effects, but you take a couple and it's a different story. And then you're just going down that thing. Hey, I've had pain issues for a long time, the last couple of decades, especially probably related to dietary kind of things coming back. I ended up, with Crohn's disease, and, anybody that knows much about that, knows that that's, it can be very painful. I had shingles a couple of times. Wow. This is like having shingles, nonstop, that, not just for a couple of weeks, but try a couple of years.
But and I get the warning because when it's kind of funny because marijuana or cannabis always had this connotation because it's illegal, right? And so the psych drugs that are actually worse for you than medicinal cannabis, that was okay for many people, and still today that has that acceptance. Now I'm not advocating either one, but I do know people that need certain help at certain points because of how their biology is, how their makeup is, and so forth, and I have seen in my own personal life too. I've seen, I trust me, Jeff. I've done my share of things that are probably not good to consume. Now, that being said, we got to be careful. But my point on this though wasn't to go down the marijuana rabbit hole or the cannabis rabbit hole. There is an allowance as in the church, if it is something that is medicinal and it's not abused. And I know somebody, I know a few people actually that actually use the medicinal, and you wouldn't even know, but that actually use it because it's used just that much, right? Just enough for them to take the edge off of themselves. And so I've seen cases where, okay, that or a psych drug. Look what happened to Jordan Peterson. Was died 2 years ago because of with the benzos that are in a lot of these psych drugs. And he ended up having to go to Russia. They tried so many hospitals in the U.S. and they tried first in Canada, then U.S. He's from Canada originally. Ended up having to go to Russia, Siberia, to a witch doctor who put him in a coma and helped him to detox off of prescription pharmaceutical medicine. And he was a clinical psychologist, right? And it still grabbed him and it almost killed him. And that's the problem with a lot of these psych drugs is the benzos that are in there. They have a really bad side effect because they're not meant to do for a long period of time, right? So if you had to like choose between the evils, I guess one could come up with an argument for cannabis, right? I'm not going into that today. What I want to get back around to now is, hey, as members of the church, please, when people are trying to come back, don't be throwing rocks at them. And remember something. I think the Lord said, "Those of you without sin, cast the first stone."
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I agree with you there on that subject. I agree 100%, and I'm not casting the judgment there on the other stuff. I think that people do need to be careful because, like I said before, I got
But be
prescribed,
very careful, Jeff. Very careful.
you
My son can't get off of it. Right. So
Yeah.
he can't get off it. And that was a gateway drug, right? One of my boys. I thank you for being with us on Courageous Conviction. Remember, there's 5 episodes each week that we put out. We have to go down a lot of rabbit holes, so stay with us. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe, and don't miss tomorrow's episode on Courageous Conviction.